It's me again, Miss Garcia. Today we're going to be going over active reading strategies, in particular analyzing and annotating a text. So the last couple of days you've been learning about parts of speech, basic sentence structures, literary devices, and that's all been leading up to being able to annotate a text because you have to have a good understanding of those, plus access your background knowledge to make some connections to really understand the text and be able to annotate it. So today, basically what you're going to do is you're going to learn how to do that by going through the Nearpod and then really going over the guides. And then tomorrow you put it all into practice. But for right now, let's take a look. So, have you ever read something only to realize you have no idea what you just read? Have you ever read a text several times only to be lost as lost as the first time you read it? For me, the answer is yes to both. And I am a teacher. I love reading. I used to devour books. I still do when I have the time. And I have an English degree. And I still struggle with this. So I can only imagine that some of you will as well. So, like me, have you ever wanted to stop wasting time and wondered if there was a better way to read? Because, our time is limited, right? You have lots of classes that you have to deal with. So the last thing you want to do is spend a ton of time reading for your English class and just be lost. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So the good news is there is a better way, and it's called annotating. Now, I'm going to be honest, it's going to take a little bit of work on your part. It might not be something that you're used to. Some of you may have done it in the past. Some of you may have never done it. We're just going to start as if nobody knows what it is, and then we're going to work through it, okay? And by the end of the year, you'll be annotating champs. So, you might be saying, great, Ms. Garcia, but what does it mean to annotate? So, to annotate means to add notes or comments to a text, according to Merriam-Webster.com. So, basically, I'm going to be adding notes and comments to the text. So, why annotate? It just sounds like a bunch of extra work. Well, annotating a text helps the reader remember, understand, and create connections. Now, the create connections is very important because when you create connections to something, you tend to remember it more. When you can say, I have experienced that before, or I know what that means, you'll be able to understand and remember it more. So, how is annotating different from my current reading strategy? Well, annotating promotes active reading, and active reading means understanding what you're reading and analyzing it kind of all at the same time. It helps create deeper connections, so you're not just going on the surface. A lot of us are surface readers where it's like, okay, it said this, that's what it means. No, a lot of writing has many layers. I want you to think of the text as kind of the topsoil of the ground, right? But then when you start digging deeper, you start to find roots and all these other things. There's more to the text than just what you see on the surface. So it also improves reading and writing skills. And that's going to be critical, especially seeing as most of you will be taking the STAR this year, STAR English 2. And you will have to be writing. And there's also reading comprehension. So if we improve those skills, that is a better likelihood that you will pass. So yes, annotating does mean a little more work, but it does eliminate mindless reading and makes better use of reading time. So you're not just going to be reading something and saying, I don't know what it means, or man, I've read that 5 times, I still don't get what it's saying. Annotating is going to help with that. So it is important to remember that every good strategy has a plan, and the annotating strategy is no different. So let's look at some of the guides. So first we have the marking the text guide. So we have it, as you can see, separated into fiction and nonfiction. All right. So we have 1, 2, 3, numbering the paragraphs. So before you even read, number your paragraphs because you're going to want to chunk it up. The same thing with fiction. Take a look at the sections. How many sections are there? We're going to circle keywords. And here's some example of what those type of keywords would be in both the fiction and nonfiction, right? It's pretty much like names, important details, diction. Remember, diction is words, words, words. Vocabulary. Underline important information, analogies, literary devices. But I have something special for literary devices in a minute. Characterizations, imagery, dialogue. But remember, imagery is also part of a literary device. So I'm going to have something for that again in a minute. With nonfiction, you're going to want to underline facts, statistics, Sometimes they even have like testimonials. You want to underline those. Those are important details. Double underline the author's claim. Now notice, this is not for fiction, right? There's no claim in fiction, but there is author's claim in nonfiction, and we're going to be going over that in the next couple of weeks. So you're going to want to double underline that, and you'll get more sense of what that is later. Question marks for things that you don't understand, or maybe information that's missing. Any type of questions you have, you want to place a question mark next to it. And you're going to want to use your context clues to help you decipher any maybe words that you don't know or something that you don't understand. I'm really going to be calling on you to use those context clues in both fiction and nonfiction. And then hashtag summary. Basically, at the end, you're just going to put a hashtag, and in 1 to 2 sentences, you're going to tell me exactly what that paragraph or that text was about. Just break it down to the simplistic form, just so you have a general idea and make sure that you know what they're talking about. And again, it's easy for me to go over these, but you're going to see what it looks like in action, and that's when you're really going to start to understand things. So writing in the margins, you want to visualize, respond, question, clarify, connect, and summarize. So visualize, what does this look like? How can I see this? How do I see it in my head? And I'm going to show you an example soon. Respond to any interesting ideas, to the author's claims if it's a nonfiction. What do you feel about that? Question, what do I understand so far? What's the purpose? What is the author saying? Do I agree or disagree? And also question the meanings. What is the meaning of this word in this sentence? What am I missing? What information do I need? Clarify. Define key terms. Reread sections of the text and analyze or connect ideas in the text. Paraphrase and summarize. Connect. This is very important, guys. So you need to start connecting with your text. Each of you has a vast amount of knowledge that you have gained as you grew up. From where you're from, who your family is, what you've learned in school, what you've experienced in life. Use that. Those are your powers. Those are the things that are going to support you in every way in English, because every time I'm going to ask you to connect, draw connections. How do you relate to that? How does that idea relate to something you've seen in the past? How does it relate to something you hope to see in the future? Is this something that you know in your core? Draw those connections. Make it so that you remember it. And the more you connect, the more you'll understand. And then summarize. Learn how to turn text into your own words. Because when I tell you to summarize, I don't want you just to restate word for word what the author is saying. No, I want you to take that text and make it your own and put it in your own words, right? Don't steal the author's ideas. Use those ideas to recreate your own understanding of it. All right? So again, we're going to put a lot of this into action over the year, but you will be practicing it tomorrow, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. So here's 2 additional symbols that I really want you to utilize a lot, to be honest with you. So I want you to use arrows to connect the markings on your text to your thoughts and the margins, and to connect context clues. So if you don't know a word, but then the definition is pretty much right next to it, or there's a synonym right next to it, draw that arrow. This is what it means. If you put a question mark, draw that arrow and write the question that you have. Because sometimes you'll have a whole bunch of question marks, or you'll have a whole bunch of markings, and you're not quite sure what you were thinking. But if you write it in the margins, if you explain it in the margins and draw an arrow, then now you don't have to sit there and try to remember. You have that connection. Also, to make it easier for you, I would like you to use brackets to distinguish literary devices in your text. That way they're going to be easily distinguishable when you're looking at your text, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So, the steps to annotating a text. There's always a plan. It's the 5 steps every time. So step 1, you're going to preview. Skim effectively. What do I mean by skim effectively? Most of you will just kind of look at the text and you're like, I kind of get an idea. No, look for key things. Are there any subtitles? Are there any facts or charts included in it? Is there anything that stands out to me that I notice first? And then again, notate any eye-catching text or images. So things that just jump off the page to you, take note of that. Chunk. So break big text into smaller pieces. Paragraphs work best. So especially when you get to the star, you're going to come across some texts that are pretty long and you can get a little overwhelmed. So if you break them up into smaller pieces, they're not as overwhelming. And then that also ensures that you understand each piece of that text. Reread. Read the text one more time. So read it one time without making any notations, and then go back and reread it. Use the annotation guide to create those notes. Because what happens is a lot of times when we read something the first time, we miss things. But when we go back with the intention of making those notes, we will find more things to notate and connect with. So then review. Do your symbols and notes make sense? I'm not going to lie, Ms. Garcia is guilty of this. There's times where you look at my books from college, from high school, even from now, and I will have made a little star or a question mark and I forgot to make the connection and write it, and then I don't remember what it means. I don't know what it means, right? I'll have a question mark and I'm like, what was my question? I don't see why I put that. So you want to make sure that your notes make sense to you, okay? That's what's important. Not necessarily to me, to you. Annotating is to help you understand what you are reading. So sometimes a symbol to you will make sense to you and not to me. But if you know what it means, then go with it. Sometimes people will use images. They'll draw pictures, right? I had a student, she was a really good artist, so all her annotations were mostly pictures. They may not have made sense to me. They were beautiful. I may not have known what they meant. But when I could ask her what they meant, she knew exactly what they meant, okay? So make sure your symbols work for you. And when you are making those notes, make sure they're in your own words, because when you put things in your own words, that demonstrates you understand. It does not make any sense to just rewrite what the writer has already done. Make it your own. Once you're done with each section, you're just going to repeat the process. Okay, so it's that simple. It sounds really easy, but it does take a little bit of work and some practice. Again, some of you may have done this in the past, because I've had some of you in my classes before. Some of you may never have done this. We're going to work on it together because I will expect you to annotate every text you read from now on. And you are going to practice this tomorrow just so you can demonstrate some of the basics of annotating. So make sure if you have questions, you hit me on Remind or you email me.